Joining us now, MS Now's Alex Tabbitt in Lantana, Florida. Patrick DeHaan is the head of petroleum analysis at GasBuddy, and Catherine Rampell, economics editor for The Bulwark and co-host of the evening edition of MS Now's The Weekend. It's good to have all of you here. So, Patrick, it's the question everybody wants to know, and I know it's not very straightforward, but I'll ask it anyway. How much higher could gas prices go?
Well, Chris, the situation has a little bit of clarity with oil prices declining, but ships still not moving through the Strait of Hormuz. And that's what matters most to all of this, at least from the perspective of oil markets. As long as that is not open to ships as it was prior to the attacks, we're still talking about 20 million barrels of oil every day that's not reaching the market. And that is still far more impactful. Oil markets may be breathing a sigh of relief now, declining on the potential that the war could end soon. But the real part of this is whether or not the Strait of Hormuz will fully reopen, or will there be continued attacks or threats of attack on ships transiting through?
Well, Catherine, the president has said he would make it safe to ship oil through the strait. He makes it sound like he can fix this even while the war continues. So is getting out of this trajectory of rising prices in his hands?
No. Every time gas prices rise, economists, economic commentators out there will say something to the effect of, look, presidents don't control gas prices, stop blaming them. It turns out presidents can't really make gas prices lower, but they can absolutely make them higher, as we have learned the hard way. The tools that the president has to try to bring gas prices down after what looks like the largest oil supply disruption in history are relatively limited. Yes, the president has said that he can use naval escorts to get ships through. There just don't seem to be enough available naval ships to escort every single tanker or other commercial vessel, for that matter, that would normally be transiting through the strait. We also have problems with insurance. The government under this administration has said that it will provide some sort of reinsurance. It's not clear how sustainable or expensive that would ultimately be. And of course, you need to have ships that are willing, crews and captains that are willing to risk life and limb, as well as obviously the cost of their cargo and their vessels in order to go through. So he doesn't have a lot of options here. We have the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which so far they have not tapped, but ultimately may. There has been reporting in places like Reuters about other potential tools that this administration might decide to use. Some things would be very extreme, things like curbing oil exports. I don't know that we're going to go there, but they just don't have that many tools available. Presidents in previous election years have learned this the hard way. And for some reason, this administration did not apparently anticipate that this was a very foreseeable consequence of this war and this major disruption in oil.
So the other thing that the president has floated, Patrick, is waiving some sanctions on oil producers. So you take that, you take the idea of escorts for ships that are going through the Strait of Hormuz. You look at the possibility of the petroleum reserve. When you look at any and all of that, is that a cohesive plan? Is that something that's likely to make Americans who are worried about how much a tank of gas is costing them any happier in the short run?
Well, it certainly can't really add up to much tangible difference. It's a lot of Band-Aids on a gaping wound. And to your point, Russia has now turned into the biggest winner of this war, being able to sell its oil at elevated prices, refunds the war machine between Russia and Ukraine. So looking back here at home, the G7 talking about commercial inventories, about potentially releasing some of those, guising it under reserves. The U.S. has the SPR, but again, releasing 412 million barrels of U.S. crude oil will take a considerable amount of time. It will also put the U.S. at risk if this campaign continues. If Iran decides to continue to attack vessels, then the U.S. could be putting itself in a corner by releasing the SPR not as a strategic reserve, but as a strategic price reducer. That is something that we've seen presidents take interest in. I don't know if it's the longest, smartest way to do things, but the logical approach here would not to be attacking this with many Band-Aids on a gaping wound. It would be to heal and seal the wound, and that would be essentially reopening the Strait of Hormuz, talking to Iran, diplomacy, other effects. There's a lot more on the line here than just oil shipments, fertilizers, petrochemicals, products like gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. Because of that, and because of the refinery attacks, We've seen the price of diesel in the United States soar $1 a gallon in the last 8 days. While you and I may be filling up with gasoline, it's diesel that's going to drive the economy to a halt if those increases do not slow down.
So, Alex, you're at a gas station in Florida. What are you hearing from folks there?
Well, Chris, I can tell you that the pain at the pump is real. The people who I've been speaking to have been spending $3.79 per gallon here at this gas station in Lantana. That's slightly higher than the average, slightly higher than the average in the state, which is about $3.63, about 60 cents more than it was last week. All of these Floridians who I've been talking to are consistent in that they're frustrated with these prices, but they differ in that they think how long this could last may be a bit different person to person. I want you to hear what they had to say.
It was cheap for a minute, and now it's all I can to put something in the fuel tank. Everything's gone up, and it's everything but my paycheck.
In the short run, it sucks, but I think that it's going to be short run. There is a ripple effect, and I do think inflation will go up based on this spike. My hope is that it's temporary and it doesn't last for too long, and oil prices come back down.
Are you feeling that pain at the pump?
Well, yeah, but hopefully it won't be that long.
You have to cut back. You have to make ends meet. Times are rough right now. If it goes up any higher, it's not going to be good.
Now, Chris, I also talked to the woman who runs the cash register at the gas station behind me. She told me she's noticed a considerable uptick in the amount of people who are asking for receipts after buying gas as people start counting every penny. Chris?
Oh, boy. Thank you for that. So, Catherine, obviously, it's not just gas prices. Forbes was reporting on how the war with Iran could show up on grocery store shelves. It says what they will see is coffee that costs a little more, berries that are harder to find, and a can of soup that quietly jumped 30 cents. So beyond direct oil prices, beyond gas, home heating, how broad is the potential impact if this goes on?
This is not just an oil crisis. It's sort of an everything crisis because it's not just about oil. It's about all of the things that are made from oil. So just as an example, something like 90% of the world's sulfur is made through processing oil. And sulfuric acid, is used in all sorts of other processes. It's used, for example, to extract cobalt and copper. Cobalt goes into a lot of batteries around the world. So you have these cascading effects from a disruption in what seems to be one market, but actually that market's products is sort of the feedstock for a lot of downstream industries that use either byproducts of oil itself, byproducts of oil, petrochemicals, things like that. And of course, you have the higher shipping costs that come from more expensive gasoline and more expensive diesel. So that's going to drive prices up as well, even if there aren't petrochemicals in the goods that are themselves being shipped. And as was alluded to earlier, you have a lot of fertilizer or the components for fertilizer that also come normally through the Strait of Hormuz. And right now, you're already seeing fertilizer prices skyrocket. Farmers freaking out, trying to hoard as much fertilizer as they can because we're about to go into the spring planting season, or in some parts of the world, they're already in the spring planting season. Brazil, for example, is one of the biggest importers of fertilizer. I believe they're about to go into their soybean planting season. So if you have a disruption, not only in oil, but the byproducts of oil, things like the ingredients that go into fertilizer, that has these, again, cascading effects through lots of other industries that will ultimately make their way to consumer prices. It won't be immediate, but it will work their way through the food chain, through the supply chain.